Next presentation, I'm going to start by introducing Tara Engel. She's a former journalist, award-winning video scriptwriter, passionate veterans advocate, president of the American Veterans Institute, co-author of Naked in Da Nang with Mike Jackson, co-chairman of Operation Welcome Home, and vice president of Integrity Marketing. In 2006, her documentary, Vietnam, A Nation Remembers, won a Telly Award, a Crystal Communicator Award, and Platinum Best for Show Aura Award. While she's getting connected up out there, let's see, you can have a place that you can hold this one. Okay, yes. Yeah, you have no belt either. Okay. Without further ado, Tara Engel. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Got a nice audience here today, and you guys are in the right place because a little while ago the electricity went out there, and this is the only place with lights, so you're stuck here. We're here today to tell you a story, and it's a story that may sound pretty familiar to some of you because it's a story about you and a story about guys just like you. It's also a story with a happy ending, but it did not necessarily start out that way. In fact, it started out several decades ago with a generation of brave Americans who were not properly recognized nor appropriately thanked for their service and their sacrifice. Now, your main speaker today, Mike Jackson, who I'm getting ready to introduce, has been working tirelessly to change that. And Mike is the guy who, as the book title that Zot mentioned a minute ago indicates, was indeed naked in Da Nang. And I'm afraid to say it is not a literary metaphor. Mike really was naked in Da Nang. And it wasn't pretty, but it was very, very clean in every possible sense of the word. Now, I am relieved to say that he is not only here today, but he is also fully clothed. And I'm pretty sure he plans to stay that way, mostly because this is a room of pretty much men, so we're in luck. Now, aside from his lapses into nudity, Mike Jackson is a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force and a former forward air controller. He has a master's in business and a very successful 13-year career as the executive director of the National Aviation Hall of Fame, which you may or may not have gotten to yet right down the hall. Interestingly, the Hall of Fame just happens to have an exhibit on the wall dedicated to FACs. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, Mike is now the chairman of the American Veterans Institute. He's president of Integrity Marketing and the Vet Assist program. He was inducted into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame in 1996 because of his work with unemployed veterans. And in June, he was named National Member of the Month for Purple Heart magazine. And that honor came in part because of his role as national chairman for Operation Welcome Home, America's long overdue celebration of her Vietnam veterans. Now, I'll be back a little bit later to tell you some more about this initiative that got started when we began writing the book Naked in Da Nang in 2001. It has been quite a journey. It's been full of highs and lows and triumphs and tragedies. And along the way, we have learned a lot about what is really possible with a little faith, a lot of hard work, and about 1,200 gallons of coffee. I am incredibly proud of what Naked in Da Nang has accomplished, but I'm prouder still to know Mike Jackson and to help him tell his story and the story of America's Vietnam veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Jackson.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be here with you today, and we are going to tell you a story that it's good news, and it's good news to all of us as Vietnam veterans, and it's good news to all veterans. So we're going to give you a shortened version of what we normally talk about, but you will get a feel for what we're up to. And this is a story that starts with our book, Naked in Da Nang, but don't panic. It is not a sales pitch for Naked in Da Nang, even though it is for sale out in the gift shop. And we do have a box of them down here, but we're not here to sell a book. This is a story of stumbling through life with no plan. I've never planned anything in my life, and coming out okay at the end, not unlike Vietnam itself. And it's a story, as I said, that starts a whole nother story, and Tara will be back to tell you about that. Now, I started writing Naked in Da Nang about 34 years ago. I came back from Vietnam, and I've always liked to write. And I wanted to write a story that did a number of things. I wanted a story, number one, that was a true story of Vietnam. And you guys all know, whether you're Vietnam veterans or any veterans, know that the story of the Vietnam veteran has never been told accurately except once, as far as I can tell. And that was We Were Soldiers. And I thought that was pretty accurate. But the crap, and I use that term knowingly, that's cranked out of Hollywood and you see on TV has never been anywhere near accurate. I wanted an accurate story of Vietnam. Now, my problem was I also wanted a story that was funny, because my philosophy of life is you don't get paid enough to have a bad time. And you can have fun doing anything you're doing, no matter how miserable it is. And I know that I would not want to go back to Vietnam again, but there were some fun things that happened in Vietnam, and I think we all kind of are in the same boat, that you have some good memories of at least the friends you had over there and some of the stupid things you did, almost shooting yourself down, almost shooting somebody else down, which was an interesting story, but I won't tell you about it. But at the time that I started to write this book in 1972, the American public was not in the place where it wanted to hear funny stories about Vietnam. Matter of fact, all it wanted to hear were bad stories about Vietnam. So the veterans came back, grew long hair, never took baths, lived under bridges, and robbed liquor stores. That was pretty much the Vietnam stereotype. So they didn't want to hear it. I wanted a story that was accurate, and to that purpose, in our book, in the back, you'll see there are 13 forward air controllers, or guys that I went to pilot training with, who've read the book either in sections or the whole story, and it's completely true, no matter how stupid it sounds. And I wanted something that was not dirty. Now, despite the name, which I'll tell you about in just a second, it's a semi-clean book. And I've seen too many books where people try to cuss their way to toughness, I guess, is one way of putting it. And in my world, and probably a lot of yours, the toughest people I ever knew were probably some of the most clean-talking people you ever knew. So despite the title, it's a clean book. I wanted something I can hand to my daughters, who were very young when we were actually writing the book in earnest, and say, this is the story of a Vietnam veteran, and it's a true story, and be proud of him. So I wanted something that was clean, accurate, positive, but had some humor in it. I started writing this book, and like I said, it just wasn't the right time for it. So I kind of put it away, and I think about it every once in a while. Well, as Tara mentioned, I was the director of the National Aviation Hall of Fame right down the hall here after I retired. And one of the things we did do, by the way, and the board never really figured this one out, is there's a FAC exhibit in there. So be sure to go in and see that. It says the facts of life, and it's a little story about facts that we put into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. But I had not a whole big budget, so one of the things I did in my philosophy of you don't get paid enough to have a bad time is I would take people out to eat breakfast at Bob Evans, which is right outside the gate here, and we would have breakfast before we went to work, and I'd pay, fringe benefit. But in return for that, they had to listen to my really stupid, boring stories about Vietnam. But since I was paying, they were happy to do that. Well, one day, Tara, who had just come to work for me, had heard one of my stories, and she said, you ought to write a book. And I said, well, be back here tomorrow. Well, being a cheapskate and wanting me to buy her breakfast, she was there the next day, also because she wanted to keep her job. And I gave her a file folder, and I don't have a file folder with me right now, but Zot's got a bunch of crap up here, and I would say I gave her a file folder with about this much stuff in it. About right?
6 pages.
6 pages. I was working overtime. And I said, this is the book. I started this 34 years ago, and this is the story. And she said, can I take it? I think she was just trying to suck up to me, so I didn't fire her, because I was right on the edge of in fact, firing her. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to take it back. So she goes back to her office, and she comes down, probably 2-3 hours later, and does her normal routine of approaching the office of the executive director, where she pounds 3 times on the door. "Sir, may I enter?" And then enters, crawling on her knees to my desk and holds the manuscript out, all 6 pages of it, says, "This isn't a bad book. Could I help you write it?" And I said, well, let's see, 34 years, I've got 6 pages done. Yeah, I probably could use some help. So we started writing this book, and we did it after work, at lunch at Bob Evans, at breakfast at Bob Evans, and you'll notice there's an acknowledgement in there to Bob Evans, our office away from the office. They actually gave us a table. Well, remember I said I never planned anything? We had edited 3 books each. She'd edited 3, I'd edited 3 as part of the National Aviation Hall of Fame service to publishers. And so now we're writing a book. I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree. I was a FAC. I can't be too bright, I mean, think about what we did. And so I got a call from Simon & Schuster, who we had edited another book for. And they said, "Hey, Mike, we've got another book. Would you be interested in editing it for us?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you," I said, "I don't think I really want to edit any more of your books." And he goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Well," "your people know how to write. They're technically very good at writing, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, the last book we read, the very first page, it starts talking about Wilbur Wright's first flight, the first person to fly, 12 seconds, December 7th, 1903, 120 feet. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "It was very well written, but it was Orville Wright, not Wilbur Wright." And he goes, "Oh." He says, "Well, okay." I said, "What you really need is a good book written by somebody that knows what the heck they're talking about." This was not planned. He says, "Like what?" I said, "Like my book." And he goes, "You've got a book?" I said, "Sure, doesn't everybody?" He says, "How far along are you?" I said, "Well, we're getting," he says, "normally we'd like to see 6 chapters. I said, "Oh, we got 6 chapters. Yeah, we got that. Can you send it to me?" "Sure." And so I said, "Give me a couple weeks," not being totally stupid. I said, "Give me a couple weeks to kind of polish it up and we'll get it off to you." Well, I run down to Tara's office and she's, got slobber all over her face and lines from where she's laying on her 3-ring binder to sleep. And I told you I was getting ready to fire her at that point. Right? So anyways, I said, "Hey, Tara, wake up." I said, "Simon & Schuster wants our book. How many chapters we got done?" And she says, "1. Am I lying?" "No." One chapter. I said, "We better get your ass in gear because we got to get 5 more done and get it mailed off to Simon & Schuster in 2 weeks. I'll be at Bob Evans if you need me." So anyways, make a long story short, we got it done, sent it off. They didn't do memoirs. They turned us on to the world's greatest agent. I fired her even before the book was done because she hadn't sold it. The book wasn't done, but it just didn't appeal to my sense of let's get this thing over with. And we ended up selling it ourselves, and now it's in its 4th printing. Now, I'm getting to the good part, which means I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to tell you what a FAC is because I'm guessing most of you already know what that is. But it's important to know what a FAC does to understand the title. There's 3 reasons why it's called Naked in Da Nang. The first reason is, honest to gosh, was naked in Da Nang. Now, I'm sure a lot of you were naked in Da Nang, but I was naked in a clean, honest to gosh, innocent way, okay? Nothing illicit involved at all. I was at Camp Eagle. I was a bilk FAC, as you may have seen on the little thing. So I lived at the 101st Airborne. Not a good life. And I hadn't seen a real shower in like months and months and months. We had practice typhoon evacuations. Everybody remember those? Practice typhoon, what are those? Those are a reason to go to Yubon for 3 days if you live in the rural areas of Vietnam. So, of course, we practiced typhoon evacuating to Yubon. Hurricane Hester, Typhoon Hester comes along, a real live typhoon. We've practiced for years that we're going to Yubon. Where do we go? It's the Air Force. We go to Da Nang. Where's the eye of the typhoon hit? Da Nang. My airplane, I can get a fly back because a hangar door fell on it and smashed it. But anyways, I haven't seen a shower. So I go in the shower and, I'm in the BOQ. I don't really know where I'm at in the building other than it's a long thing and there's right in the middle of it's a bunch of showers and you take a shower. And I hadn't had really hot water in a long time. So I used my Army training of not much water. You get wet, you step aside, you soap all up from shampoo all the way down. You look like a Michelin man because you're just completely soaked up. Then you step back in the shower, turn it on, rinse off as quick as you can, and then you're done because you don't have much water. I forgot I was in Da Nang. So I rinsed up and I'm ready to jump back in the shower and bang, the power goes off. Well, guess what? So the water pumps. So I'm standing there in pitch black, covered from head to toe with soap. But I'm not really as stupid as I've led you to believe because it's raining outside. Yeah, I am stupider than you thought. So I'm feeling my way down the hallway, which I don't know where I'm at. It's a strange BOQ, but I can see a light underneath the fire escape down at and I'm kind of going down there, and I hit that door, and I'm naked and everything. I hit the door, and it wouldn't open. Now that's God telling me, Jackson, you're about to do something really stupid. Not being one to listen to God on a regular basis, I slammed against the door a couple times, finally got it open between gusts, evidently. I'm outside, door slammed shut, locked. No key, no pants, no towel, no nothing. And I'm out there on this fire escape, almost literally getting blown off the fire escape. There's plywood flying by, there's corrugated steel flying, there's small children flying by, there's dogs. And I'm trying to get my way down the fire escapes because I can figure I can go in another door. They're all locked. I'm out there pounding, and I realize, remember the Vietnamese housing that was just off the base at Da Nang? They're all looking at me. And mothers are going like this to their children, and pointing and laughing. I don't know what the laughing was about. Well, yeah, I do know why. But different body parts had turned into very small windsocks. I finally got back into the building. Somebody let me in. I didn't know who they were. They let me in. I got all cleaned up, but I was naked in Da Nang. So it involves an unfortunate showering experience. Very, very clean. But from the FAC point of view, reason number 2, we were pretty much naked to the threat. I was an O2 guy. If we got hit flying around whatever altitude we were at the day, from 1,000 feet, maybe down or up, if we were out of control, you had to unstrap, get in the right seat, pull a jettison handle, remember up in front of the door, open the door, push the door out, jump clear of the prop and the boom, and then pull your D-ring. We pretty much naked to the threat. No armor. Radios cost more than the airplane. So what they did, I don't know if you know the story behind the O2, I can tell you this because I've lived at Wright Pat and understand the whole development thing, is that they went out and they said, give us the biggest, cheapest piece of crap you can find, because that's too good for these guys. And we're going to put radios that cost more than the airplane into it, okay? So it wasn't, no armor, we're by ourselves, so we were naked to the threat. And the third reason that Naked in Da Nang is a good title, and believe me, I'm wrapping my part up here, so it's going to get better because she's got a mini skirt on, and I'll give her this so she can walk around. But I was going to wear one too, but I just didn't want to wax my legs. It really hurts. Is that I was an old guy in Vietnam. I was 24 years old. I've been to college, 4 years. I've been to a stateside FAC unit after pilot training. I was in that experimental group where we went over and got 4 rides, and we were checked out. We were sent on our way. So I was an old guy. I was 24 years old. Most of those guys over there, and a lot of you guys in here, were maybe 18, 19, 20 years old. I'd been around, and I wasn't ready for what I saw at all. And we were naked to what to expect. So I think there's 3 reasons that the title Naked in Da Nang works really well. And I'm sorry, but none of them are really profane. I could get into, if I had more time, rules of engagement, why we weren't allowed to win. We could have if they had let us. I could get into a lot of that stuff, but I want to turn this over to Tara, who is going to tell you the last words of the book. The first words of the book, and it kind of sets the theme for the whole book. The book is not a war story per se. There's one airstrike in detail just to let people that don't know what airstrikes are like know what one's like. And the rest of it is just, I'll talk about an airstrike. We did an airstrike. It's not a war story. It's not a hero story. At no point do I look like a war hero, because I'm not. I did my job and I left, just like all of us did. But the neat thing about it, and the reason I knew that it was working, was the first time we sold it was at the EAA thing at Oshkosh. And a couple guys bought it and came back and said later on, "Who gave you permission to write my story?" And these are Army guys. And I thought, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a true story, but it's everybody's story. So from the start, mine is a charmed life, to the last words, here's Tara.
Okay, well, the book starts out, as Mike indicated, with the words, "Mine is the story of a charmed life." And it proceeds to tell just exactly how that all worked out for Mike. The last words of the book are "Welcome home." And those two have a very profound meaning. Started out when we began writing this book, I began to notice that every time we talked to a Vietnam veteran, it would be a perfectly normal conversation, just like I would have with anybody else. But Mike and the other Vietnam veteran would always end it with a firm handshake and the words, "Welcome home." And I'd be looking around going, well, I know he's been here. Where the heck has this other guy been? Once I began to realize that this was a trend, I thought, okay, I need to find out what this means. So I asked Mike about it. Now, you may have figured out by listening to him that he's one of those folks that is rarely serious about anything. This is one of those very few moments when he did get very serious. And he was quiet for a minute and he said, it's a habit that Vietnam veterans fell into because by and large, nobody really said it to us when we came home. So we just started saying it to each other. Now, I can't tell you how much that moved me and saddened me. I like to think we've learned a lot in the last 35 years. Hopefully, we have learned that soldiers do not start wars. Politicians do. And we've learned that eating K rations and MREs and living in jungle rot or desert heat or sub-freezing temperatures is nobody's idea of a good time. And when you throw getting shot at on top of that, well, it's not fun. No matter what the war is about, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's well run, whether it's badly run, America's soldiers, sailors, and airmen are sent there to do a job, and that job is to protect our freedoms. And you guys know better than anybody else, all they want is to perform with courage and honor and to come home in one piece. And once they get here, what they want and they need more than anything else is to be welcomed and thanked for their service. Now, we're doing it today, thank God. We did not do that 2 wars ago. Now, we did welcome home the troops in the 60s and 70s, but not the way a GI dreams of in the middle of battle. Mike tells the story of coming back to Travis Air Force Base on his way home from Vietnam. Should have been a pretty joyful occasion. And he was advised by the Air Force that he might want to take his uniform off before he walks through San Francisco International. Why? Because the protesters were working people around the clock, and if they saw a uniform, they made a beeline for it. Well, that's no way to come home. Later on, Mike was told that you might not want to include your Vietnam service on your resume because, these guys are kind of unstable and you don't want to get a reputation for something like that. I think the most telling thing happened when we were giving a presentation not too long ago. And afterwards, a 2-star general came up to us with tears in his eyes. And he said, "I want to tell you about my homecoming." And his homecoming involved, he was a young captain. He came back to Chicago's O'Hare Airport to meet his wife and his brand new baby daughter, who he had never seen before. And all 3 of them were spit on in the terminal. Now, to this day, some 30 plus years later, this guy still gets choked up talking about it. Those things make me very ashamed of who we were as a people back then. But I have never been prouder of who we are as a people than I was back in November of 2005 as we walked the Operation Welcome Home parade route in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we saw people stacked 20 deep in many places, ages 4 to 94, shouting thank you and welcome home to our Vietnam veterans. Now, this was an event that came about thanks to that guy sitting down there, who is far too modest about his impact, because he said, you know, there's a little piece of every Vietnam veteran that watches the welcomes and watches the thank yous that we give the guys today, and he is so grateful to see that America has turned the corner, but he's also sitting there going, geez, I wish I had come home to something like that. And we got to talking about it one day, and I said, is it too late? Can we give these guys some kind of welcome home? And we talked a little more about it, and we batted it around, and he was a little concerned that America wasn't ready for it, but he thought it was something that needed to be done. So he went out and did it. We talked to some people we knew in Las Vegas, and they said, yeah, we'd like to get in on this. We'd like to hold the welcome home. From there, it began to balloon. We had celebrations that took place across the country in 2005. And we had the huge celebration in Las Vegas, which kicked off on Veterans Day with a 2.5-hour parade, 168 units, 3,500 Vietnam veterans. And it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. And we were towards the beginning of the parade. And I kid you not, Mike walked backwards most of the way because behind us we had a contingent of Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, all Vietnam veterans. And he wanted to see the look on these guys' faces because as we started to move off the parade route and head down the street, the crowds began to rise. These people stood up, they waved flags, they screamed thank you, they screamed welcome home. People were reaching over the cables and trying to shake hands with the Vietnam veterans. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. We had a USO show, and Anne Margaret showed up, bless her heart, to entertain the troops again and to thank her boys. And she was fantastic. She was just as sweet and just as gracious as you could possibly imagine. We had day and night partying all along the Las Vegas Strip and Fremont Street. They pulled out the stops and they let these guys know that America truly appreciated their service and sacrifice. Now, I could go on and tell you all about my impressions, but I have a letter that I keep with me, one of many that we received from Vietnam veterans after the event, and I'm going to read that to you because that sums it up for me. Mike and Tara, you may not know who I am, but in Las Vegas, I marched behind you at the Operation Welcome Home parade. I am still talking about the celebration. The guys at work are a little jealous, but they understand that it was way overdue. During the parade, 101st Airborne Division soldier started out fine, but as we went further on the route, his eyes got glassy. I looked at him and told him everything would be all right from this day forward, and that he was home. His wife walked with him for support, and the love was still there. She knew in her heart that his homecoming had been too long, and watching her walk with him in the parade, man, oh man, I cried with him. I want you to share with others what people told you during this celebration. Do whatever it takes to get the word out. Use my name and know that I am speaking from the heart. I cried when I got home and talked to my wife about all the things I had participated in. I told her to wear the Welcome Home pin proudly, and when they ask about it, you tell them that after 33 years, your husband finally got to come home. Proud and with his head held high, not a hero, but a soldier who did his duty and got recognized for it. It may be a little late, but he is home. Thank you again for all you did, John Daly, Enid, Oklahoma. For us, that says it all. No matter how many times I read that letter, I choke up because that's the bottom line. That's why we wrote Naked in Da Nang. That's why we developed the idea for the celebration, and it all goes back to honoring soldiers for their service and their sacrifice and thanking them for running toward the thing that most people would run away from. And this summer, we got the greatest gift of all. We got the chance to do it all over again. We got a call from a lady in the Antelope Valley of California, who wanted us to know how Operation Welcome Home had affected her husband. Ray Santana and his friend Gary Chapman were selected by Lancaster and Palmdale, California, to serve as Vietnam veteran ambassadors to the Las Vegas celebration. They went to this event, and it was especially meaningful for Ray, who had really struggled over the years with America's reaction to the veterans of Southeast Asia. Linda Santana said her husband came home a changed man, a proud man, and a man who wanted to share his new perspective with other Vietnam veterans. So Ray and Gary and their wives and a whole slew of volunteers began planning an Operation Welcome Home for the Antelope Valley of California that is going to rival the Las Vegas event. And they will once again say thank you to the men and women who gave up their youth and their innocence in a place called Vietnam. Now, if you'd like to know more about this event, you can go to www.avwelcomehome.com, and I urge you to spread the words and help us change lives. Now, last Christmas, I had an interesting deja vu experience. I was at a holiday party and just kind of tapping my foot and listening to the music, and I realized I was listening to the song, I'll Be Home for Christmas, always one of my favorites. And I remembered listening to that song back in the 1960s and being taken aside by my grandmother and told that it had special significance and I should understand what the song was about. She said, whenever I heard it, I should think of the guys serving in Vietnam who were away from their families and would not be home for Christmas. And I remember being dumbfounded. I don't think I really understood what it meant to get shot at, but I just couldn't believe that they weren't going to let these guys come home for Christmas. I mean, what kind of deal was that? I couldn't imagine that there were Americans somewhere on the other side of the world who were scared and in danger and away from their loved ones. And whenever I think about that Christmas so many years ago, I realize that everything changes and nothing does. We still have troops in a hostile country in the middle of a war that nobody can seem to agree on. America's sons and daughters are fighting on behalf of a precious intangible known as freedom. And the best way that we can honor them is by remembering the lessons of Vietnam. And how do we do that? Well, for starters, the greatest gift you can give someone currently serving in the military is to promise them that we will always, always remember to separate the people from the politics, and that we will never again forget to say, welcome home. And the other way to remember the lessons of Vietnam is to remember the GIs of Vietnam. And I would like to ask everybody who served in Southeast Asia to please stand up right now. Would you please? Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every one of you for giving up a piece of your lives so that I am free to live mine. You are my heroes. Welcome home.
Welcome home, guys. I'd like, I don't know how much time we have here. I'm sure that everybody's over, but one thing I'd like to say is I'll get you. Hang tight. Just hang on there. I'll get you. I'm coming at you. One thing that I think is neat, and I tried to get across a couple times in the FACnet, is that this is a celebration, Operation Welcome Home, which continues this year. We've had more than one, the big one's coming up in November. There have been other celebrations. We're calling it the celebration that refuses to end. And with any luck, it'll go into 2007. We got an email from somebody just yesterday talking about putting on an event 2007. The neat thing about this and all of you is it was a celebration that was inspired by a book about a FAC, by a FAC and a girl. And you guys have got a vested stake in this, because anytime anybody talks about Naked Da Nang and the book that inspired Operation Welcome Home, they're talking about you guys. So congratulations and welcome home. Now, I know I've had at least one question. Yes, sir.
My name's Ray Butler, and I'm an Australian that served as a FAC.
Hi,
So it
Lee.
wasn't just, we had 34 Australians throughout
Yes.
the war, and we were all fully qualified fighter pilots that went there. And we were sort of like you, we were in our late 20s when we went there, and we fought with our brothers here, and I'd just like to say how proud we are to be.
Thank you very much. And thank you. What was your call sign? What was your call sign over there?
For 6 months, I was with the 199th Infantry Brigade, Drama 03. And then for 4 months with the 25th Division at Kuchi, issue 23.
Thank you very much. And thanks for those kind words. I think Zot standing there, that's usually an omen. It's kind of like death hanging over your, I think we're done. I will say this, the Air Force Museum has got our book out there. We have got our book here. I kind of asked him if it was okay to sell them. We can do that. All proceeds go to Operation Welcome Home to help finance. We're in our 4th printing. We haven't seen any money. All the money goes to Operation Welcome Home. Also, there's some flyers down here that you're free to take, even though they do cost us money. No. The neat thing is, while we're in California, we have been asked to meet with some Hollywood people about possibly turning Naked and Denying into a movie. So there could be a movie about you guys out there someday. We'll see.
More accurate than the movie with Gene Hackman and Danny Glover.
Thank you very much.